are officially introing. Hello, everyone. I have to tell people I'm introing. That's not a good sign for how good of a host I am. Welcome, Carly and Cynthia. I got
Thank you.
Carly Beaumont and Cynthia Torres on the show. This is exciting.
Hi, Dwight. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
I have been so excited to hear That Pop, This Life coming back, your guys' podcast. And I don't know, Carly, would you say it's the flagship podcast of our network, of the Core Temp Arts Network?
Yes, it was. It's the one that started it all. When I was home, I guess almost 9 years ago now, and I was pregnant, and I was like, I need to do something creative. And I told Cynthia this idea. She was like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And I was like, all right.
That was only 9 years ago?
Well, the baby that I was pregnant with is going to be 9 in a couple of months.
Well, so. Yeah, that one. But we only started That Pop This Life 9 years ago.
Yes.
Because the one that was born before the one that you were pregnant with
is 12. Right.
Right. But
I love to date things in my life by when my kids were born. It does actually help as you get older.
It does.
Like,
I know, but
yeah.
But it's very strange because it's like when you do that, all of a sudden you're just kind of like, oh man, my kid is, this old now. Crap. A lot of time has passed.
My oldest turns 20 this October. So
wow. Congratulations.
You made it.
20.
Yeah, I know.
No, that's not okay.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not ready.
And you look like you're 20 yourself, Dwight.
There's no way because
right.
like Desi likes to say, it's amazing how we have that old of a kid when I'm only 19. I don't get it.
You guys were both on the show a while back in the first round.
Apparently, like 9 years ago.
Apparently.
Around 6-7 years.
I'm still not okay.
When I started
it feels like it was longer.
Yeah. Yeah, life's funny that way. They say it goes faster as you get older. I find that actually as you go through it, it feels really long a lot of times. And then looking back.
Right, especially when you look back.
I started doing this thing a while ago when I haven't done it for a minute. Maybe I should trot it out again. It was sort of a little unofficial social experiment. Usually the thing that all adults do whenever you talk about time is, oh my gosh, is it June already? Oh man.
Yeah.
Which, it's always about 4.5 weeks, is how much you got in a month, usually.
That's it. Right.
And, so when you're planning weeks in advance, of course you're going to do that. And, but it does feel the time slipping by. So I started as an experiment just saying like, oh my gosh, finally, it's going to be June or whatever the month was. It seems like May is taking forever. And
to get here.
The funny thing is that about half the people, when you say something like that, will go, yeah, that's true.
Isn't it crazy? Yeah.
Isn't it crazy? Well, it seems
God, isn't that crazy?
Spring. It just depends how we frame it. And then the other half would be like, what's wrong with you? I was like, yeah, you saw through me.
I'm a hairdresser and I schedule the same way. All right, I'll see you in 8 weeks. And it's like, yeah, that'll be Halloween, or that'll be this holiday. It's like, especially throughout the holidays when as you get closer, or when you break it down. Oh, I'll see you in this many weeks. Oh, that's Memorial Day weekend. Okay, and then the next time you see them, it's like Labor Day weekend, and then the next time, you're going.
Yeah, you just go through the year. Yeah,
right. You go through the whole year because it's like 8 weeks at a time, and it goes a lot faster than day to day.
You guys, I wanted to talk about kind of how we approach life. Just a nice little narrow, specific topic, life.
Very specific,
yeah.
I like that, yeah.
Nice and concise.
It's all about the micro.
Small lane.
Yeah, microjournalism. It's a very popular trend in podcasting. We'll take one thing and really, really drill down.
And really just dig in.
Hole through it.
The reason I was thinking of that, it actually has to do with, and I'll have you guys say it in a second here, the theme, or what'd you say, the intro tagline to describe your guys' podcast is all about how do we approach our life, right? So tell everybody what that is, your intro statement.
Well, the intro, I start every show, and I actually thought about changing it when we came back, but I start every show going, welcome to That Pop This Life, the show where we talk about pop culture, life, and the ridiculousness of it all. Pretty much that was just kind of like, I didn't know what I wanted the show to be about or what we wanted the show to be about. We just wanted to talk about like the stuff that we usually talk about. And it ended up being like, we talk about life stuff. because we talk about our lives, and we talk about pop culture because we like talk about TV and movies, and then like a bunch of other dumb shit. So all the ridiculous shit. And so it was like that, but then it kind of morphed into what you are talking about, which is kind of like the way you approach and the way that we approach everything that we talk about is just kind of like with a little lightheartedness. Life is already really tough and really, especially now, really tough and hard on a lot of us. So sometimes it's okay to just look at even a serious topic with just a more lighthearted, eye. Kind of like what you were saying about framing the time span, the time moving.
There's a lot of people, and I feel like it's especially nowadays, the culture, we've gone through a lot of trauma, and mostly I just wanted this episode mostly be about COVID. Not really. Not really. Everyone. We've done that sometimes, but
oh my God, all the PTSD.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and I think we really don't appreciate that, as well as I feel like some of what that has brought out is actually the normal trend in modern life to just be overwhelmed. I mean,
yes.
And it's caused us to hopefully question, and sometimes question just in the way that we get stressed out. But how do we approach and break down our lives if it's like, wow, some of the things, for example, I took for granted about just being able to drive around without thinking too much about it. And now it's like, oh, maybe those of us have been in a position to not have to worry so much about gas. All of a sudden are thinking about, okay, did I get paid yet? Is I going to fill up my car? Am I doing a $5 thing? And it's like, wow, it's been a while since I've really worried to that level maybe about gas. So not to humble brag. No, I'm just kidding. But that's
pat yourself in the back there, huh?
Okay, so I don't worry too much about
Listen,
gas.
if you can pay for gas and eggs,
yes,
you're doing great.
Then you are better than the most of us.
Well, now it's 100% store brands to only pay 25-30% more at the grocery store than instead of like, right? And I like that flavor a little better. Nope.
Right.
Forget that. It's 3 times the price. Yeah. So
everything.
So anyway, yeah. And a lot of guests I've had on talk about just life is hard and how do we live it. And I'll say, even though you guys break it down in a lot of times a lighthearted way, that has actually caused me to be exposed to other things in kind of in 2 big ways. The way you guys break down life is actually very, can be inspirational to me. And the other thing is you guys are also, which is kind of the theme of Core Temp Arts as a network, I think, introducing, well, this will sound like a white guy thing to say. Get ready.
I love it.
Introducing a lot of diversity. And here's the thing. It's not there's diversity. It's your guys' lives and your experiences, right? Coming from things. But it opens up other experiences that maybe like I haven't had, for example. Right. And it's all about me here. So that's another white guy thing to
obviously.
Say. Yeah, that's a very white guy thing for you to do.
Well, I don't usually admit it out loud, though, Carly. That's
right. And that's what
at least you let us know.
Everybody else, yeah. No, we do, but it's just our lives, and it obviously at Core Temp Arts, it's or everything that we do, everything that I do, I feel needs to kind of reflect the things that are important to me. Women. I'm a woman of color, queer. So it's like all of those things need to be represented in everything that we do. But I'm also like a huge pop culture fan. So if that gets, added onto it, sure, why not?
Yeah. That's
sure.
And for me, those are big parts of life, right? If we wanted to, and that's one of the reasons I actually shifted my theme of my show a while back to not just a view of therapy and healing, but also it's more of now like a psychological look at life and culture, because and that also opened me to be able to have creative people on, even if there wasn't a therapeutic benefit directly, or they weren't a psychologist or something, to say have more artists and authors and things on too. Because those things that we do day to day are what life equals, right?
Yes. And media and pop culture kind of permeates so much of our lives and even who we are.
Isn't it part of like the breakdown right now
of life?
Social media has big impact on how we feel and how we see ourselves and what we think we should have versus what we have, and all that great stuff.
No, absolutely.
When you guys were on the show before, it was all about safe behavior and, well, let's say non-douchey behavior online. I don't think that was the name of the episode, but it was something like that.
Yeah.
And I wonder, as you guys, and you guys had a break, and so as you're coming back and as you approach situations in life, and social media might be a good example of that, do you find you're talking about it differently at this point than you did originally?
I feel like now politics and LGBTQ AI rights and women's rights, like that is it's permeated the conversation. Like there's very little that doesn't reflect that on, with it, whether it be on the TV that we watch, the social medias that we consume, the accounts that we're looking at, like the things that I'm sharing on my stories, whether it be on my professional, my private, or the that Pop This Life Instagram or socials. It all has to do with some sort of political rights, something attached to it, because that's what pop culture is right now, across the board.
Yeah. Right? No, that's
there's nowhere.
Point.
It's in music. It's on TV. It's on
movies,
on your socials. It's art. Your comedians are talking about it. It's your art. It's your short of like seeing a play that was newly written in this time. Everything else is that.
Yeah. And in terms of like how we like look at things differently now than how we did before, I think for me, it's very different because I'm a very different person than I was, let's say 6 years ago when we, did our last couple of episodes. I'm an extremely different person. I've been through, things that have changed me on a cellular level. So I think the way I see life in general or pop culture or think is completely different than how it was when we in the first iteration of the show, where I always like to joke where I was just kind of like, the reason that we stopped was because I lost my joy, and there was no way of kind of seeing the world in a lighthearted, through a lighthearted lens. That isn't that much different now, but I think I can like figure it out a lot better than I did when we first stopped, the show. So I think that's for me a major difference.
It's interesting what kinds of things we do that are either an asset to our joy or a liability. You could put it that way.
Right.
And how those things evolve too. I think how do we approach life? One of the big things is acceptance of that evolution and that difference in priorities, or if that's a good way to say it. But basically what you're saying is kind of going with what feels healthiest at the time.
Right.
And and trying to have that, accepting that things do evolve over time, right? To say,
Absolutely.
this used to bring me joy, and now it's actually a burden. How do I redefine how I'm approaching it, or do I change what I'm doing? And if I change what I'm doing, do I change again, or when do I? Flexibility typically is pretty healthy.
What a simple way to see change. Because in my head, I'm like, that means that I've been doing it wrong for how many years? I don't understand. Why is it changing now? I've been doing this. I get real crazy about it. So that's one of the things that I like deal with.
No, I have a bit. I mean, trust me, shame. I'm pretty familiar.
What a nice
friends.
Good way to see the life changing.
Well, because
versus like beating my past self up for like not knowing any better.
Right.
I had a therapist who introduced me to. We've done an episode or two about this, touching on what they call internal family systems, but a therapist of my own who introduced me to the concept, and I've studied about it and used that in my practice now. But one of the underlying theories there is like how people used to talk about the inner child, but yet the theory is we have like inner children, so to speak, and we call it emotional parts of ourselves. And I found that even just the vocabulary there that they taught me, that I work with. For example, you might say like, oh, there's a part of me that panics and feels really shameful and guilty when I learn something new. And then there's a part of me that appreciates learning something new.
Right.
And there's like these competitive parts that are duking it out. I find
Yeah,
just
the
kind of
one that
looking at
panics usually wins.
that. Yeah.
Well, the one that
Well, it's
panics
louder.
holds on a lot longer.
Yeah.
It's a lot louder, that one.
It sort of has an evolutionary advantage. Our brain's like,
Yes.
whoa, you know.
Yeah. What are you doing? But we were okay. We were okay yesterday. What happened? What happened?
Well, one thing though, I think that is a strength is when we can own things and talk about it, just like you did, and just, I mean, you guys do it all the time, but
Yeah.
I think that's what keeps us sane. That's how we go back to that pop this life.
Yes. No, absolutely. I think Cynthia, in this iteration of our show, Cynthia came up with our new segment this time called Bragging Rights. And it's pretty much just, it's like the little things that we do, we still have to celebrate the same way that we do the big things. You know, getting out of bed sometimes, doing that load of laundry, learning how to, I don't know, sew or something. You know what I mean? We should celebrate that internally for ourselves and externally for others, the same way we do, you know, a wedding or a baby or a new job or, you know, a new car.
Well, because there's a lot less big things in life than there are small things. And I find that because my automatic already happening in my head is to panic when things change or to freak out or to like, well, it's not even panic. It's that I literally then start looking and taking inventory of what I've done up until then and badmouth all that instead of like being like, well, that was a learning process. And I think if we do it as we're learning it, it's a lot easier to remember bragging about it than it is to be like, oh, well, I didn't say anything about that, so I should have been ashamed of that, or I did that wrong, or that's why I didn't tell anybody that I was doing it because clearly I was doing it wrong this whole time.
Right.
Versus like if I already was like, yay, I opened a bank account.
Right.
Yeah.
when something else happens or
and those things are the most intimidating sometimes too, actually. But we don't like to talk about it because if it's like going through a period where it's like I can barely even get in the shower, and if I'm good enough at masking it, you know, that, or I just can't even brush my teeth now very much.
Yeah,
we don't like to tell anyone that.
I think the goal is more like how well can I mask it versus just this is what I'm dealing with. Right, this is what's happening.
Right, and sometimes it's good to say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, and that's okay. And I think that's pretty cool. Like I've been working on learning Italian or something, and I just had a conversation with someone, and I think that that's really cool. You know, I'm not completely fluent, but I can do it now. You know, and I think that those things we think those things are important. Because like Cynthia said, the bigger things that we usually celebrate are few and far between. So to kind of like help us along the way of this like really hard life that we're living, it's nice to celebrate the little things as well.
Yeah, especially as we get older, right? Like you're only supposed to celebrate a wedding once. So if you've done it once or you did it in your 20s, you're not supposed to do it. You're not supposed to celebrate that much if you're getting married in your 40s, regardless of whether or not you're doing it for the first time. You're kind of supposed to be a little ashamed if you wait that long. You know what I mean? Like it's like fucked up.
Right. Yeah.
Because I've been in that room with brides that are like, oh, but you know, I'm this age. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not the way I treat myself always. Right. You know, like if I was thinking about it really, I'm like, well, no, you have to do it now. It's a more muted, really, you know, celebration, and you can't do this and blah, blah, you know. And then my grandmother celebrated her 75th birthday as if it was her quinceañero. Not recently, but, you know, like she did that a couple of years ago. She's now like, I think, closer to 80 than she is 75. But she did that. Like, she was like, I'm going to have a quinceañero. She didn't have one. She might have had one. Who cares? But all her 70-something-year-old friends were there, and they had a blast.
Yeah.
She celebrated it like it was a quinceañero. You know, short of having a full court and an entrance, she did it.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. I have a friend who is a therapist that, and you'd see it on Facebook and stuff. She'd share like when she did a birthday celebration for herself, and she'd pick a party and a theme and usually costumes and all kinds of cool, but for her, because that was a big deal. And there's an old expression about how after a certain age, if you want a nice big birthday party, you got to do it yourself. And but yet, once again, there's a vulnerability there, like a shame, as you said. We're supposed to feel like, oh, someone else should do it for me, and not everybody wants that, but it's like kind of knowing what you want and need and kind of going for it, right? We have a Zoom freeze issue. Let's pause.
There you
We had
go.
a little Zoom freeze issue, and so
You did.
yeah, it's my favorite frozen dessert, Zoom freeze.
Zoom freeze. What flavor?
Yeah. So
I like Bahama breeze.
I was.
Does
Yeah,
that come with alcohol? Because I'm in.
it's an
for a
option,
Zoom freeze?
You know, you
It's
have
an
to. It
option.
For the
depends how
summer,
you
that sounds
order it.
delicious. Can we make
Yeah.
one?
Zoom
I'm gonna have a
freeze.
strawberry Zoom freeze thing.
I like a blueberry Zoom freeze.
Man, I
Sounds-
gotta edit that. Maybe I need to edit that out. This is gonna be the first signature drink of the Core Temp Arts podcast.
There we go.
So
We have a
I
Zoom
gotta,
freeze.
TM.
TM, right? TM.
I'm
Don't
gonna-
steal it. Don't steal it.
I gotta put it in a self-addressed envelope that I want to
Envelope.
open.
And send
Oh,
it back
So
to
it'll
you.
be dated,
There you
right?
go.
Yeah.
I used to do that when I was like 12 and I wrote scripts.
Aw,
And I used
you
to do
did
that.
used to do that.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah,
I have a
that's
bunch of
the old-
envelopes full of like, scripts I wrote in high school.
Nice. Have you opened them? Because then you've destroyed
No.
the time date.
Right,
sensitivity.
exactly.
No.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta maintain that evidence before
Yeah.
Spielberg
it.
or
Like a-
Scorsese scoops in, and
Gets it. Hey, you never know. He could want it.
Intellectual property. I'm
Yes.
gonna do it. I'm the one that knows all the stories. I read them all.
oh, this guy.
Yes.
This is-
That's
I
how
did-
we
I used to
became
proof-
friends.
if I can
I
cause
used
a
to
rift
proofread her
between
stuff.
other podcast hosts, that's what I'm here for.
That's your goal in life? I cannot. Dwight.
So, but that
His
issue before the freeze
mastermind.
of the shame where you mentioned we're supposed to feel bad.
Mhm.
If I throw my own birthday party because I care about that, then should I
Right.
feel a little bad? Or
Right.
one of the dynamics I've noticed recently, I have an 8-year-old, and it's interesting how having a kid gives you a gateway into kid stuff, like to
Yes.
play, be playful, to tell stories, read certain books, watch Bluey, whatever it is. Although a lot of people watch Bluey without their kids.
A lot of people.
You and I feel like you are one of them, Dwight.
He has his own group of
That is
parents
like,
Hey,
I'm
we
a
did
that
Yeah.
watch
huge-
Bluey.
We did that. Isn't that on TV8 My Brain? We did that.
It
Carly
is.
and I
We did
a-
season 1.
Yeah, Bluey episode.
It's awesome.
Of Bluey?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my god, I love that.
Yeah.
It's
I
funny
gotta
because I was
say, though,
reason-
I'm a Bubble Guppies parent. Those were my
Ah,
favorite.
I love
Ah,
Bubble Guppies.
Bluey,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
my son watches Bluey, but he was older and I was no longer like necessarily watching cartoons with him. But Bubble Guppies, that's where it lies. for
That's
me.
where your heart's at.
That's it.
What time is it? It's time for lunch. What time is it?
Oh,
I love them because it's
love
like
it.
a variety show. I love them.
Yes, it is. It's amazing.
But there's a gateway to some of those things that are kind of like, and Blue's probably a good example because a lot of people unashamedly now are saying like, oh, I just let it run after my kid falls, goes to bed. I come back and turn
Yeah.
it back on. And then
Because
there's people
Bluey
without
doesn't have
kids.
any of those like louder. They don't
Yes.
they don't tap into those loud sounds or those like high pitched sounds that
That
a
old
lot of
people don't like.
cartoons that yeah
That
old people,
us
yes.
us oldies.
Oh,
find very
old lady
annoying.
Cynthia. It's like no, turn her off. She's squeaky.
Yeah.
And they talk about like really, it's funny because I take my son off of YouTube, right? Because I rather him watch the cartoons. They're so much nicer.
Of course.
That's
Yes.
They have manners. They're much nicer to each other. I feel like he does a lot less frat boy behavior when he's watching cartoons versus YouTube.
Absolutely.
Well,
yeah.
it's funny
Same.
how a lot of the YouTube personalities, and I haven't reached that level of popularity in my podcast yet to do this, but especially a bunch of dudes, especially even if their content is perfect, Anyway, they eventually kind of turn into Jackass from MTV.
Yes.
Sort of, right?
Yeah.
If someone gets
Yeah.
popular, then they're like, "What? I'm going to destroy a car." I feel like I'm going after a certain particular one people might have picked up on what I'm saying. Nothing against. I'm sure they're listening, but just in general, though, that's a trend, and I like how you put it. Nicer. I think.
Mhm.
I think we had, I think about this a lot. For me, it was like, I noticed it around a year, maybe 2 or 3 years after like Breaking Bad was real popular. And don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed Breaking Bad. But a lot of shows then learned from that, oh, we want to be dark. All right, we can be dark. You want to see dark?
Right.
We're going to have someone get their head cut off in the first 10 minutes.
Right.
And I think there was almost like it wasn't a loud outcry, but I think if you subscribe to the idea that pop culture, media, movies, and TV are kind of like the desires and dreams of culture at the time,
Right.
there was a lot of like sincerity and wholesomeness that started coming out in movies. You got movies like Dream Horse or Breathe or whatever, just different things that
I feel like that
came out that time. Yeah.
I feel like that was very prominent, or I noticed it more post-pandemic. Because I remember when TV shows came back and they were doing pandemic, oh my God, it was like PTSD. Like I'm watching it and I'm like, no, don't leave that country. Don't get on the plane. You're never coming back. Like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
you don't know what's coming for you. Like the pandemic is going to ruin your life.
Well, there was,
but they they touched on it. They acknowledged it, and then they went to like regular TV and became a fantasy again. And I was like, all right, thank God, because I don't want to relive it. Like after the second or third show that did it, you're just like, okay, can we move on? Because like now we were there, and it's so alive, or at least it was so like vivid for me that like Carly and I would talk about it all the time. I'm like, oh, Grace is doing the pandemic. Oh no. We're gonna, oh no. And then like, or what was it? The one on the Today Show, the morning show.
The morning show, yeah.
On Apple TV. The first season, like towards the end of the first season, they had just started the pandemic, and like someone was walking in a crowd, and I was like, no, put on the mask. It's too many people.
Spores.
Oh my God.
It used to be, it had to be the walking into the haunted house alone or whatever. Let's split it up.
Just
like, don't do
now
it.
It's just,
and now it's like,
now it's just walking into a crowd. Don't come in.
I was like, wear a mask.
Put on a mask. Right. Yeah. Oh no, it's a parade. Like,
and look at how people, I think there's a couple of markers of that for me, just exactly what you said. Which was John Krasinski did that sort of YouTube internet series of just, here's nice things. And people just went crazy about it. The other funny, it's a funny little memory is when the third Bill and Ted movie came out.
Yeah.
And I sat there watching it and I was like, this is kind of dumb in a lot of ways. However, where it really scored for me was it was very sincere. It was just nice. It was, and I was like, this is great. And it's like, it's not really great.
No, but it's like great for like to watch and to enjoy. Sometimes I find myself, especially post pandemic, where I'm just kind of like, I just want to watch something dumb that doesn't make me like super, feel and think and be so into it that afterwards I'm exhausted or I'm like emotionally drenched or something. I just want to watch something and be entertained. And not Marvel, because yes, I can definitely do that, but just something nice. And and you're right, there have been so many shows that like popped up during the pandemic after that are just like good and entertaining.
Look at the Ted Lasso fever,
Oh my God.
Essentially a show about being a nice person.
Yeah. A nice person, right? And it's not necessarily shallow. It's actually a great, wonderful show, but it makes you feel good inside.
Yeah, they really
the whole time
confronting something with and I keep using the word sincerity because I do feel like that we have gotten to a point where sincerity isn't cool, and maybe this is always the too cool for school kind of thinking. Nobody wants. There's a lot of cynicism. Nobody wants to sort of got unexpectedly, and it just, I think it backfires sometimes to where, I mean, take social media once again. It's like there's a difference between being an effective advocate, even sometimes a spirited, or even heated at times when we are defending things we believe in. And then there's the whole, I don't know, there's one I really like that I follow, and it was like, it's a Twitter account that kind of looks for, here's some bad, examples of racism or homophobia, and let's call it out what it is. And we'll put this video out there. And they did one the other day that was like, here was a guy littering, and he was kind of a dick when someone told him not to litter. Let's tear his world down. And I was like, okay, I mean, that's fine, but there was no racism. There was no, it was just kind of like this guy did a bad thing. And it's like, oh, well, all right, where are we going?
Right. So then we send the 5-year-old to yell at him, because that's what the 5-year-olds learn in kindergarten. And that's what the level that they're at, right? Like if you just littered, my son asked me the other day, he's like, why does everybody litter? I'm like, I don't know, puppy, but you're right. They're not supposed to.
Right. And we've lost like an interpersonal sincerity of just, excuse me, like a little kid will say something like, that makes me sad when you do that or something. Like,
just keep it simple.
My youngest.
We don't have to shame them.
Yeah. Like my youngest, when she's like, hey, you're leaving the water on too long, I think, because we're wasting it. And I'm like, there's that part of me as an adult that's like, you sure.
I could leave it on if I want to. I'll pay the water bill.
I'll pay the bill.
And then it's like, oh, wait, that's actually a good point.
Right. Yeah. Actually, you're right.
Right. I am teaching you good things. Okay, great. We should save our planet.
Yeah. So not trying to embrace sincerity, I think, is an interesting thing. And even embrace that part of us that's like, if I like kind of playing with my kid in a certain way, or saying like, oh, we all love to sit down and play Mario Kart. And I do think there's some on the positive side, there are movements and people who are like, yeah, if you like that, like it,
Right. Yeah.
But yet still there's these weird unspoken rules about what am I allowed to feel okay about. Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think Cynthia and I talk about this a lot, but not on the show necessarily, but like in our private lives, that I'm always saying that, like, I love what the young people are, and I'm old enough to say that now. I love what the young people are doing now. They are kind of tearing down all of those societal rules that kind of don't make sense anymore when it comes to personal space or emotions or self-expression or whatever the case is. Like all those walls and all those barriers are being broken down, and now you can say, hey, it's okay, I'm kind of a grouch, and that's okay, or I am going to feel my feelings, and you have to allow me that space, or if you don't like it, you have to just leave me to be me and allow me to just express who I am and be who I am. And I think young people are very good at that, and I like to take a lot of cues from the youth, because we are, our age and above are like very judgmental, and we're still stuck in a lot of those like societal rules and regulations that we have to, quote unquote, abide by. And I think the young people are just kind of like, we don't really, you could just be you, and that's okay.
And it's interesting. I always say every generation tries to teach the next one to be independent. And if you're a good person, you're also teaching your kids to try to be nice to people and accepting. Yes. And every generation has pushback once they're taught that, and then they start exercising it. The previous generation's like, great. Whoa, hold on. No. Right. Whoa. Right. You shouldn't love those people. Whoa. Hold on. And it's a different group of people generationally, maybe, but there is that tendency to say, well, it's funny to me, like some of the biggest complaints I hear people say about young people are essentially they're implementing the values we taught them.
Yes.
Without the boundaries that we hoped were there.
Yes. It's like, oh, we want to give them the world, and then we are complaining that they don't know how hard it was when we were younger, and that struggle. But we absolutely made sure that they didn't. So it's like I don't know. Yes, I don't know if you have, friends or patients or clients, but like, I feel like that's something that, our generation and above kind of struggles with sometimes.
One of the biggest things that I see that there's an example of that is when people are purposefully accepting and loving and supportive of their kids. Yeah. Here's a real funny thing. Oftentimes we tend to do that, especially if we came from a more rigid upbringing. Obviously, people learn from a kind upbringing, but a lot of people who had a harsh upbringing will purposefully not be neglectful or abusive to their kids. And they'll try really hard. And then one of the things that sneaks under our radar is that kids who are in a more supportive environment will tend to talk back, air quotes here, back more. And when sometimes they are, and sometimes they're doing it immaturely because they're immature. And sometimes they're actually just expressing like, hey, I have a voice in this relationship. And then
I feel safe to do so.
Internally, there's a reaction that the parent has, which is, you're not supposed to do that. That was drilled into me as a kid. I would never have. And sometimes it just takes like one question to ask ourselves and say, yeah, but why wouldn't you have? You would have never.
Right.
Why would you have never?
No.
Oh, because of all the things you've tried to eradicate from your own parenting. Hey, that means it's working when your kid is a little bit like, I didn't think that was fair. You said that to me. And you're like, right. And inside it's like, oh, wait, it's working. You need to try to remind yourself that you're succeeding.
I have a 12-year-old girl that I am currently raising and trying not to murder every day. I have that conversation with myself almost every day.
All the time. I do that with my 6-year-old because he's a lawyer. And he exercises his law degree on a regular basis towards me specifically.
Yeah. Hey, college will be so expensive by the time he's of age that
that's what YouTube
his
is
law
for.
degree will be awarded just because of those experiences. Most likely.
I argued 75 cases against my mom and one.
My mom has record of all the cases that I argued.
And here's some transcripts of her podcasting, so you can get a measure for how smart she is and how hard that would be, to win.
Yeah.
I've got like 50% wins. That's pretty good.
Right. So I feel like
I wanted to hit on this. One of the segments on your show is Brilliant or Crazy. And I wondered about how you guys approach that. Yeah. Because I think we ask ourselves that a lot about things in life. Is this good or is this kind of too weird or should I be accepting or what's my,
Yeah. I cannot for the life of me remember how that started. I'm pretty sure it was Cynthia because she comes up with these segments.
What did I do now?
Brilliant or Crazy.
Cynthia's like,
no, you came up with Brilliant or Crazy.
Did I?
That was original. Yeah, that was original. That was original cast. Original.
Original.
That Pop This Life.
Yeah.
Original company.
What do you mean by approach? Like, for example, we just. My thing was just like there are so many strange things happening in the world and going on in the world and created in the world that it would be ridiculous to not talk about it, right? And Cynthia, I think before we did the show, Cynthia would always just send me stuff like that. Back in the day, it was on Facebook. It was her, and it's like, oh look, I saw this on Facebook, and I was like, this is ridiculous. So that's more or less the idea of where it came from. But the way we approach it is pretty much that. It's just like we don't know everything. We don't know everything about everything. And sometimes, when we go out to other cultures, there are going to be things that are strange to us, but may work, or maybe something that we didn't think about here, but may work even though it's a little weird. And it's nice to kind of talk about it. And also, there are a lot of really strange things out there, and it's always a good laugh to go through them and ask and wonder how it was created. That's pretty much the approach. It's not that scientific.
Well, it's an interesting, though I think there's some elements to it that you just laid out. Well, one of the things that I always really find interesting is no matter how different or new it is, you guys do approach it with respect. And even when there's an issue where you're kind of like, this is a little more on the crazy side or a little more on the unhealthy, or we don't love it. But you always have reasons. That's the thing, is like you talk about it. You don't just, once again, the cynicism of nowadays to just say, oh, this is trash. This is stupid. I hate this.
Yeah.
You guys never really do that. You might say, I don't agree with this, but here's why. I have a thought process around it. Right.
Yeah.
And there's that respect that you give to things, which I think, and as people get confronted with these things, there's sometimes such an anger response when it's something new. It's like, oh, well, I'll be open-minded, but furries? What? I mean, that's one that people have a lot of hard time with, something like that. And then if you get to know it, it's like, oh, okay, I can understand actually where somebody, it's not my thing, but is it something? And instead of just being like, oh, I've heard all these weird things about it online, but yet, oh, here's the, and I'm not necessarily picking on the furry thing. I hear a lot of people, I don't have like a bias against furries, but
no,
a lot of people.
You want to talk about it, buddy?
All the people with the tongue, with the cat tongue.
That was one of the first brilliant or crazies that I remember. I started messaging you guys when I was listening to the episode, because I'll do that to podcasters that I know. Hey, that was a good joke. Hey, that was, and they're like, what do you do? Wow. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, Dwight. All right. No.
That one was special.
It was a tool that you put on your own tongue to clean your cat.
You hold it. You know how like the like a ring pop?
Yeah.
You hold it on
and you hold it on your mouth.
The opposite side.
Yeah.
And then you.
By the way, do not use a ring pop for that. No.
That is a sticky mess. But I think we don't look at these inventions. There's an invention for everybody. There's a group of people. There's a niche. There's a billion people on this earth, and if 0.1% of those people buy into your niche, more power to you.
Absolutely.
But just because we don't agree with it, which is, I guess, why we're always like kind of more PC about our disagreement. We know when it's not for us.
That's
but
a
that
great
particular
principle,
one,
though. I think even if even as a person who, like, one of my own core values is to be open, accepting, non-judgmental. I mean, and I feel like that I am that way pretty successfully in my life, but it'd be hard to do my job otherwise. But also, it wouldn't be very interesting podcasting either. But at the same time, it is also okay to have our own, I don't want to say biases, but our own, like, for ourselves. Like, I don't have to be into everything. And I can go, oh, that cat thing is kind of weird. I can laugh about it. At the same time, I wouldn't like actually judge somebody if they're like, yeah, I do this and I lick my cat with his fake tongue. And it's like,
I do this and then I lick my cat. You might judge.
It's like I might go,
you might not judge out loud, but
odd,
I'm going to judge a little bit.
It feels odd to me. And it's okay that it feels odd. It's just how do I look at that person, right? Do I look at that person and say, oh, you're a weirdo? Or do I say, oh, you must like that? Why?
I mean, kind of.
Yeah.
But in a funny way,
weird if you think about it, right?
Everything is weird if you think about it. And everything is weird if it's not, if it's not in your world, in your orbit, you're probably going to think it's weird. And to me, I'm a big believer in, like, it's okay to judge, but I think be compassionate about it. You know what I mean? And be respectful and be sincere about it. So yeah, we do talk about stuff that could be very, very strange to people. Sometimes it's super weird to us. But at the same time, it's just like Cynthia said, it's like there's an audience for everything. There's a market for everything. Like we were talking before, like it's okay to be who you are and like what you like. And if I don't like it, I don't have to, discard you. It's okay if, you like licking your cat with a prosthetic tongue. Like, that's cool. We can still be friends. You know what I mean?
I know. If you like the Snyderverse, it's okay, but don't be a jerk about it.
But don't be a dick about it. That's it. You don't have to be a dick. People don't have to love all the same shit that you do.
No. My mom would let my brother and I explore other people's religion, right? Like if a friend invited us to church, my mom was A-okay with letting us go. But she always said, I'm Catholic. I'm not looking for a new religion. I'm not looking to be converted into anything. So you can come and share it with me, but don't come and try to change me into what I'm not.
Right.
You explore, we can talk about it, but respect that I am, and I know what I want to be, and this is where I'm staying.
Right.
So I think if we approach people, more that way, versus, like Carly said, I don't have to agree. And a lot of the things that we talk about on Brilliant or Crazy, am I ever going to look into them and order it or buy it or use it? Probably not.
Well, that's working Jell-O, definitely.
Well, I mean, there is that.
Right.
And there's the chips that if you guys get, I have to try.
Yes, we're doing that. Other than that, you won't.
Other than that, no. But you know what I mean? It's not my place to interfere. Like you're not if you're not showing up in front of me and attacking me, or there's no like direct attack, you do you. I'm just gonna talk about it a little bit. I'm gonna talk a little shit about you. Not you, your product. Maybe you. I don't know. We'll see. But in all lightheartedness, just a little bit of shit. And then we're gonna laugh about it and we're gonna be okay.
Let's just
Yeah,
keep
we're
it
still
going
gonna be
long
cool.
enough to where we're just like, "Argh."
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna make it personal. It's not
Right.
about like that person's an idiot. No, it's like, well, that's not a tool that I would use, and it looks idiotic. But hey,
and I've
whatever,
heard
whatever.
when you guys have talked about things of like, yeah, I don't want to judge. However, I might judge the judgment of a group or a person, especially if that judgment that they have is harsh. It's
Yes.
okay.
Mhm.
It's like that old thing people say about like, oh, if you're a tolerant person, you can't have trouble tolerating intolerance. And it's like, yeah, that's a crazy. We won't have to go there, but
Right.
that's a crazy circular logic that doesn't make
It
any
is.
sense.
Right.
But it's like saying if you hate Nazis, you can't hate Nazis because you gotta hate because that would be what a Nazi would do or something like that. You know, it's like
Oh,
Right.
that's just
Yeah.
confusing at some point.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, that's
You know, to say like, oh, but I don't agree with this, and I've heard you guys do that in a way that was like pretty like serious at the same time. It was always still respectful, and I think that's another key for people to take. I know as we're kind of drawn up on
Thank you.
time. You're welcome. I wanted to ask. I always ask people to give when they've been on the program the first time. I ask them to give like a charity that they believe in and that they would
Okay.
promote or ask people to do. If they've been on before, and so you guys can fall into either of these categories, up to y'all, because it's been a while since you've both been here. Although Carly, you've shared quite a bit of charities on here when you've been on. The other thing I've started doing is asking people if they have a healthy practice or something that makes life feel a little bit better that they would recommend. It could be something, as we said, even something small, or it could be a big thing. And so I want to put that out there. You guys can pick either of those, even both if you want, but no pressure either way.
Wait, repeat that. Just like a life.
Something that you can do, just a day-to-day thing to do that can help to make that day better or make life go in a good way.
Cynthia, you can go first.
what I do to make life better on a day-to-day. I do smoke pot. That does help.
That does help
There you
a
go.
lot.
But let's see. I think journaling. No. Realistically, I do tapping. Is a form of meditation that I do. I find that meditation itself is too still for me, and I either fall asleep or I don't believe anything's happening. So tapping, because it has an action, it keeps me paying attention. Although I know that the tapping actually has another meaning for your body and what it does cognitively and all that stuff. But for me, it just keeps me alert because I have to physically do something. And
a lot of people have trouble with what the people might think of as standard meditation, which is your transcendental meditation, is what's been the popular one. But there's multiple. What you're doing is meditation, right?
It is. It's just a different form, right? And I feel like when you're, at least for me, when I'm trying to do the just sitting there and meditating the transcendental, I feel like it has to be so far away from what I think, you know what I mean? It has to be something epic and magical, and I levitated or something for it to be working, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it becomes much harder for me. Whereas this, even it could be the same thing. It could be a placebo for me, but it just makes me feel like I'm actively working on the meditation.
Awesome. Yeah.
Meditation.
Yeah. I think that's very cool. That's a hard thing for a lot of people. That's cool. Thank you.
And then as far as a charity, I just found this out, so maybe we need to do a little bit more digging. But there's a March 31st, queer youth is taking on marching for their rights.
Yes.
I can send you some links for people
absolutely.
that have there's a charity that you can donate to, so that they can pay for speakers and people to come and facilitate and And I think they have a link also for if you wanted to organize one in your area.
Oh, great.
So there's a couple of links that I can send you.
It says 50 statewide march on March 31st. And if you go to queeryouthassemble.org, that's where it is. That's where you can go. And I mean, it's a list of demands for the queer youth for this country to kind of just take care of them. I know we're not really great at taking care of our youth lately, but they're asking for things like, equal sex ed and trans health research, and to ban forms of conversion therapy and, things that actually matter, and to teach LGBTQIA, BIPOC, and disabled history as part of the curriculum, so things like that. And it's on March 31st of March. So we just discovered it this morning. We were talking about it. So that's something that we can do. We can send you the link.
Oh, absolutely. I can put in the show notes on there. And so everybody should do that. Go to queeryouthassemble.org. Yes. I think that's excellent. This is something anyone who's heard the show, I'm very concerned about, especially the attack on trans youth right now. Yeah.
Oh my God. It's terrible.
All youth, exactly. Women and people of color, but trans and LGBTQAI.
Well,
there was a wait, this is like side note, but I mean, it's kind of funny. There was a meme, a TikTok where like it was the reading caption, and what was it? She was like, "I will not be referred to as LGBT." What was it?
Legitiqua or something like that.
Legitiqua.
Yeah.
From now on, I will be referred to as legitiqua. That's what
I kind of feel like we should switch the I and the A. Because when it
I feel like that should be like a word
AI, now, right? If it's like certain people hear AI rights and they're like, "Well, hold on." No.
Right, now computers have rights.
We're giving rights to AIs.
We're not giving rights to Midjourney. Come on now.
No.
So very excellent. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on again, guys.
This was super fun.
Yeah,
thank you for inviting us on.
Thank you for having us.
Great, Dwight. I appreciate it.
Everybody, you tell everybody where to find you.
Go ahead, Carly.
You can find us at That Pop This Life on all socials, and thatpopthislife.com is where you can find out. You can listen to all our episodes and find out where you can listen on other apps as well. So that's thatpopthislife.com.
Awesome. There's coretemparts.com is the whole podcast network as well. And there's some exciting things. The pandemic disrupted a lot of people's schedules. And one of the things that's great about the network that also makes it a little extra work for people is that it's all independent podcasts. They're not sponsored by. And nowadays, I was just reading an interview with Jesse Thorne, who's in charge of the Maximum Fun. They're doing some interesting things to keep their podcast network somewhat indie at the same time as being a network. Whereas a lot of the larger companies that are coming into podcasting, I feel like are doing so sometimes at the expense of someone a podcaster, or taking their content or charging, or whatever, just kind of looking at it as a way to sell to people. And so what I'm trying to say is like Core Temp Arts is an excellent example of an indie. Lots of the same kind of values that we're talking about today of diversity, inclusion, and just also fun, So
it is. Thank you, Dwight. Cool. So. It is. And we have to support the indie podcasters because the big corporations are kind of taking over because they see where other people are. And that's, and that's not what we want to do.
And I enjoy some of those, shows. But when you have a podcast that has an ad for Chili's or something, it's like, okay, that's kind of a big one.
Right.
Most of us aren't going to get contacted by, Target or something,
Right. Or Nationwide. Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yes. So. But we are independent, and it's really just us making content that we care about and are passionate about, and and have fun doing it. So
you can also go, anybody out there, I'll do this, will be for the network, but I'll also put in a loan for myself. If you want to participate, if you're the kind of person who, if you tip your waiter, but you feel like tipping your podcasters a little bit, or paying just a little even for some of the content you're going to have, you can go to patreon.com/brokenbrain if it's for this show, or patreon.com/ is it just /Core Temp Arts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Slash
if you
Courts and
wanna
Parts, yes.
Get involved and even a little tiny bit. You put that in there and, you multiply that by listeners and things. It really does help.
It adds up.
We can do more frequent. We can have, more pre-planned shows and stuff. So that's a little bit out there for everybody. All right, y'all. I guess we all got to engage with life now and go on with our day.
Boo.
Life.
Let it end on an up note there.
Try to end on a positive note. Boo, life. No.
Boo, life sucks. No.
If you take nothing else away, Boo Life is the...
Boo.
Hey, that's a new... TM, that's
Boo
a new
Life.
podcast we should start up. Boo
That's
Life.
a baby podcast of That Pop This Life. Yes.
Yeah, Patreon. So. Anyway, we'll make t-shirts.
I love the t-shirts. I love it. Thank you for listening to the Courts and Parts Podcast Network. To listen to more Courts and Parts shows, visit courtsandarts.com.